You look fucking terrible, bro. Say something, Ortiz.
Who?
You.
Me?
Yeah, but not. Well, I mean, your face looks terrible, but I'm referencing your screen. All right, Burke, say something.
Hello.
A little more substantial. Talk about the size of your dick. Something.
It's huge and it's impressively vulgar.
I'm keeping
That's
that.
the intro, isn't it?
That is the intro. And welcome to Space Chicken, the podcast that is really into mood lighting. Today we're taking on the gross topic of RPGs or ARC Plus. And joining me today is in the top square is Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hello, YouTube.
Coming to you on the top right square is our Neanderthal with the nothing rhymes with Neanderthal, Wilson. Say hi, Will.
Hello.
And unfortunately, Scott couldn't join us. He fell into a well, and currently he's being evacuated out of the well. So I feel like that's a valid excuse to not be here. Now, RPGs, ARPGAs, or role-playing games, a genre that's near and dear to me. And talking to Mike earlier, far nearer and dear to him than honestly, and I don't want to sound like a piece of shit, I would have bet on. I would not have bet that all the stuff you revealed to me in the pre-show meeting was actually a part of your life. Like a million times. They go, hey, you think? No. So, and we'll get into that in a bit, but I want to first talk about why I want to talk about RPGs. And first of all is because I'm playing right now. And a lot of times the topics that we come to in the show come either because of Steam or Humble Bundle. Right, where they're like, hey, we're having a sale on a game that you wanted to play 5 years ago but never did because you didn't want to pay full price for it. Here it is for $5. And right now that game is South Park and the Stick of Truth, which as a huge South Park fan, not like a historian of South Park, I've been playing and I've been enjoying, and it's a turn-based RPG. And despite its kind of like comedy angles and its general self-awareness of being a game, it has some pretty good RPG elements to it. And I just want to tell the audience now ahead of time that in this podcast we'll be referencing games from the past as examples. However, we're not claiming that any example that we use for a single game is the historical precedence for that. For example, if I talk about XCOM being a turn-based strategy style grid video game, I know they're not the ones who started that genre, and they didn't invent necessarily any of the game dynamics in it. I just want to go ahead and preempt all the fanboys and true game historians when we go, hey, I did this in this game, and they go, they didn't do it first. It's like, dude, relax. I just wanted that's my PSA for the internet ragers and the YouTube commenters out there. As far as the stuff we talk about. But we are going to talk about some stuff historically in the context of our life experience with it, because for me, the originator of RPGs is Dungeons & Dragons, and I don't even know if that's true. That's just the earliest recollection as I could possibly have of an RPG. But again, playing South Park and the Stick of Truth, there's a lot of things that happened that challenged my idea of an RPG, if that even makes sense. And again, bringing stuff back to mobile, which is the major competitive scene for gaming right now, is that I think with Overwatch coming out this last Tuesday, and I've loved every second I've played of it, even when I get completely destroyed by another team, I enjoy it. So I can't say. I feel like they're kind of redefining what a MOBA is. And that Smite took the MOBA from the over-the-top view to the third-person view, and now Overwatch might be taking the idea of the MOBA into a first-person view that I think over time we've redefined, far before the MOBA even existed, what an RPG is. So I just wanted to talk with you, Will, as we start, if we're gonna bracket this discussion, what an RPG is, what you guys think defines a role-playing game. And I'm going to start with you, Will, because you were late to the recording. And I just want to bring up that this guy wants us to start doing this live on Twitch, which I'm all about, but he can't even make the time to get here on time for the recording time. So how are we going to announce to people, hey, we're going to record, we're going to broadcast this time at Twitch? Because everyone knows when a TV show says they're starting at 9, They show up at
They mean
10:20.
10:15.
Yeah, exactly.
We could run
Exactly.
ads
No.
for a whole hour,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
that'll keep thrilled. Yeah, they'll tune in for that shit.
Exactly.
Can't wait to watch the Warcraft trailer over and over again.
Over and over.
Oh my
Which,
God,
Which, by the way, with the first trailer, not interested in that game. Right now, totally hyped to movie. Totally
Movie?
hyped to watch it. So, Will,
Still
and I'm
look
still
forward.
hearing the buzzing and ambient noise, and I know it's not me. Will, what do you think defines an RPG?
I think something that immerses you into the character, into the world. So, when I think of an RPG, I'm thinking Final Fantasy VII immediately. It was such a good game. You just jump right into the world, and I really enjoyed playing as Cloud and, kind of going through the story. Yeah, it just feels immersive, like you're in another universe. And every single character has this, overarching story or, their own backstory. Like if the world feels alive, you know.
Okay. Broad strokes, real broad strokes you painted there. Almost copying out your words. I'm gonna go ahead and call you out. Immersive, like how like you say. Role playing games tend to be immersive, but I feel like they're immersive for other reasons, not just creating a world. Like Mike, so when we talk about RPGs for you, right? Well, it's his really broad example of immersing you in a world. I played Call of Duty 4, right? Before it just turned into this same churning of the same game every year. That was the first time where they went from being a World War II game to a almost modern game, right? That was the first one that they did that was like that. I felt immersed in the story. There were two stories running concurrently. There was the one of the British Special Ops, right? And then there was the one of the Marine. And they were running simultaneous, and I felt immersed. Would you call Call of Duty 4 an RPG?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Wow. So Ortiz's or Will's definition of an RPG is bullshit and a lie. Is that what we're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Called you out. He called you
Wow.
out. Okay, so let's back up before we get into Burke, which again I found out while you were busy being late to the set, predetermined and agreed upon time for recording. He is like an RPG master. Like
Wow.
Don't hang that on me.
right? And I don't mean like he's the best RPG player in the world. I'm just saying like he's old guard. Like he's old guard RPG, which I stand behind saying shocked. This is shocked face in my mood lighting. Shocked.
So he's back in time, playing Final Fantasy 1.
It's not your turn to ask
sir.
questions.
Oh no,
My
sir.
bad.
Uh-oh.
We're not getting into that.
Final Fantasy, barely an RPG.
Rarely. That's child's play. That's
Wow.
like hey.
Wow.
Listen, I'm gonna
Okay.
give you an opportunity now to redefine
School me and the viewers.
what you think an RPG is.
Wow.
Because it's not an immersive world, right? So
But-
we have to scratch that. The immersion doesn't matter.
But you're role playing, so the world has to be immersive. But you also, I
All
think,
video games are immersive, or at least they attempt to
attempt to be, yeah.
Dun,
Okay,
dun.
you win. You win.
Fucking Michael Jordan. Baka. All right, try again, man.
So then I have to say that it's the characters and the world. Having really interesting characters that drive the story forward, enjoying it, and just seeing what the world has to offer.
So I got oh my god, I can't believe I'm blacking out. We did a whole show on it. The time game.
Quantum Break.
Quantum Break, right? Oh, what a great word quantum is. So Quantum Break, right? Quantum Break came with Alan Wake for the 360, right? And Alan Wake is a very interesting character. The world is immersive. I was really into what was happening. Such a great, fantastic game. Is Alan Wake
True.
an RPG?
I want to say borderline-ish. No,
The answer is no.
it's got like a
Absolutely
kind
not.
of thing.
The there's no loot. The only thing you collect is ammo. Like ammo and flares. And flares is technically a type of ammo since you're fighting like spirits possessed by
thing.
darkness. Yes. So we're going.
You're
with-
falling into a very
Oh,
regular
man,
trap
that's-
here,
this
Ortiz.
is- Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
feel
that
like
is that
I'm not ready. Though.
I don't
Video
think you know
game
what
players.
an RPG is.
Video game players do not know what an RPG is.
yeah,
Like,
that's,
They know what the
what it
video
feels like.
game version of an RPG is, and every single one of them will start with Final Fantasy, and then a number afterwards. But those are not RPGs. Those are video games based in an RPG.
I feel like I need to like go on Google and search what an RPG really is. If you go all the way back to like the olden days, you're thinking about Dungeons and Dragons, and you're thinking about dressing up and
Whoa.
creating, this
Dressing
world
up-
for yourself.
Dressing up was never a requirement.
Part of it. Okay.
Why don't you why don't
maybe
you
it's the
why don't
stigma.
you school this punk ass as to what a RPG truly is?
Grand-
Can you
Grand
let us
Theft-
know what you
So,
what you enlightened me on?
at least to the world that I was introduced to,
Mhm.
an RPG, a role-playing game, is a game. So there is mechanics, there are rules, there are limits and extremes and blah, 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 blah. But the character you play. The game mechanics don't tell you what your character's decisions are. The game mechanics don't limit your decisions. The only thing that limits your decisions is what you bring to the character. And the character can be defined by 1,000 different traits that any of these games might give you. Being lawful neutral or, evil chaotic, blah, 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 blah. So when you first create that character, you're using that as the spine of the character. I know this character, he's a paladin, so he's lawful good. He always does what's right, blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't mean that at some point I may have played Dungeons and Dragons and looked at the dungeon master and been like, what do I need to roll to kill this evil bastard in his sleep? Because I know he's going to screw my whole group up before this mission can even get taken off. And he went, you sure you're allowed to do that? And I was like, what do you need me to check? And he goes, I think I need you to do a charisma check to make sure you're comfortable with this as a lawful good player. And I said, no problem. Roll the dice, stab. Killed another player's character, freshly rolled character. And I said, this guy is not coming with us. And I stabbed him in the middle of the night in his sleep. Rolled him up in a blanket, threw him out the window, and the rest of the group had to carry on. And the role-playing part comes in that I knew I did that. Everybody else at the table knows I did that. And the other guy has to pretend like he doesn't know. He just played his other character like, can't believe that dude got stabbed last night, and we don't know what the fuck happened. That's a role-playing game.
That's wow.
So
It sounds a little bit like MMO, no?
Well, you're saying MMO, but you're leaving something out of the MMO, and that is it's a 6-letter acronym. Like we've gotten in the habit of saying MMO because the implication is that it the rest of it is RPG, right? So, but it's MMORPG. It's a massively multiplayer online RPG, and that is the part that you were missing. That it's not just a factor of an immersive game, right? So I mean, we've had many an immersive game. Like I put the original Call of Duty 4 as an immersive game, and again I cite that because I usually point to that to Advanced Warfare. I didn't play, so I'm gonna put that out there. But there was Modern Warfare. And then the rest of Modern Warfares were kind of shit. And then there was Black Ops. And then the rest of the Black Ops were kind of shit. And again, saying that I haven't played Advanced Warfare because I was kind of calling it out. you can get immersed in a story. Alan Wake was a really good story. You get immersed in that story. You start caring about the character. However, that is a story. Like I always tell, I always have issues when I don't watch a lot of movies and I don't do a lot of TV. I just, that kind of storytelling doesn't do anything for me anymore. And that's just me. Like, I'm used to partaking in interactive storytelling as a participant in the video game culture, right? Like, I've been playing video games since the NES. I've actually played since the Atari, but I really don't count that because the Atari, like, it didn't immerse me, if that makes sense. There was nothing immersive of Frogger. Like, Mario was kind of immersive. Zelda,
The little dots
was,
weren't doing it for you? Is that
yeah,
it?
Zelda was definitely immersive, right? Like even for that shitty little game that it is now. And again, we're saying that using hindsight, immersive. But the role playing part of that game, like it doesn't, like that's not the only, that's the key part of the immersion, right? Because I don't know if you two are readers. Well, actually I do know. Berkey, you're a reader, right? You read books. You've been immersed in books. You're so immersed in books. Actually, you've sworn off the Game of Thrones series, right? Because as you explained it to me in a private conversation, not having a podcast, but what you said to me was you were actually sick and tired of them immersing you in a character and then killing them off in the book series, not the TV series. We're talking about in the book series. So I know, like, and I'm a reader too. I enjoy that type of storytelling. I enjoy playing a game where I'm doing the part where they say you shoot the guy, but an RPG is inherently different in that the role playing is important. So for me, an RPG has two key factors in it. One, I determine character development, right? On classically a stat sheet, right? Classically, it's the old graph papers from Dungeons and Dragons. And as far as I know, there's nothing before D&D as far as role playing is concerned. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think anything existed prior to Dungeons and Dragons that got into our RPG level stuff. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, YouTube.
Yeah, I would almost guarantee that there is something that had that spot before D&D, but D&D made it big and popular.
Yeah. And again, that's probably why I don't know anything before that. So there's the character development, and number two is decision making. Like, that decision making is important on some level or another. So now, Will, you referenced Final Fantasy VII, which I'm like most people of my generation and my age will remain a secret because it's no one's business. But Final Fantasy VII was huge for me. Like, that one sold me on video game RPGs because I play D&D, but I didn't play D&D the way you play D&D, Mike. I played D&D with figurines on a board, right? So when you play so for those of you who've never played Dungeons and Dragons, right? There's two versions of Dungeons and Dragons. There's the figurine version of Dungeons and Dragons, and there's the straight up graph paper version of Dungeons and Dragons. And when people talk about graph paper versions of Dungeons and Dragons, they're talking about you focus literally on leveling a character, and you use the graph paper to say, hey, his charisma stat is this, his strength is this, his agility is this, which will sound incredibly familiar to players who haven't done that but have played RPGs in video games, because I believe in my heart that every underlying system of an RPG is just Dungeons and Dragons digitized. Now, and then what you have is a dungeon master who has the freedom to create a story, and within that story, the people who are in that dungeon participate. When you play the board game version of Dungeons and Dragons, which is what I came up on, which is a board game Dungeons and Dragons with the little figurines, and the figurines were awesome and they were great and they were collectibles. You were stuck in the story for that board, and I know probably more hardcore D&D figurine players will tell me you can make up any story, yada yada, whatever. I get it, but you were stuck in that story. So if it was the story of the burning village, the board you popped out was a board, and you put little fire icons on it, and you put your troop of your 5 people, and they run through. But it's rehearsed, it's done, and it was meant to be kind of an introduction to the more hardcore form of D&D, which is just a straight up graph paper form. But But what was important in that is it still had decision points. So while the Dungeons and Dragons that I believe you came up on, Mike, and again I didn't come up on that Dungeons and Dragons, so I am making tons of assumptions right now, was a straight up the Dungeon Master got to make a story, and you guys got to participate in that story and shape the story. So he kind of gave you guys a, hey, this is the world, this is what we're doing, and like you said, hey, I'm gonna kill this guy in his sleep, kind of deal. Like, is that what happens in like the graph paper form of D&D? And that's not the only game you played, so I want you to get into the other stuff that you've done too.
Well, the graph paper is more just a and like we never used just like, I mean, we always had, you know, there was always blank sheets of paper about for, you know, scratching things down and information and that kind of stuff, but we actually had character sheets. I think they were a hybridized version of what was available from one of the books, like a Dungeon Master book or a guide that my friend had taken. And very early on in the PC evolution had said, oh, I would like to have these things added, and this would be more important than this block. And so we had very customized stuff. And what I've found over the years that I played Dungeons and Dragons, and then years where I've talked to other people who've played Dungeons and Dragons, it turns out I had a really great Dungeon Master, which is always a ridiculous thing to have to say in front of other adult human beings. But our Dungeon Master was unique in the fact that he made his own sheets and gave them to the players, and that he was the dude should have written like movie scripts, because he was very descriptive, and he would give you a package. He would literally print out like a 5 to 8 page package whenever we started new characters and be like, here's what your character inherently knows, so you could read this thing and have an understanding of this world on a limited basis. And then when we played, we usually played on a card table. There were a few figurines. If you happen to have a figurine that you particularly liked, like when I rolled my infamous paladin, Sir Patrick, I went to the card store and I bought.
No. So was that an Irish thing, Sir Patrick, or?
He was actually Scottish for whatever reason. We watched a lot of Highlander in high school. It was a whole thing. So I actually went down to our local. I mean, I was a regular at the comic book store. And the comic book store had D&D and a couple of the card games that we played, and so I went down and I, you know, rifled through all the stuff until I found the perfect little paladin figurine, and then we went back and I painted him up just right, and that's Sir Pat, baby. I still have him. I swear to, he's somewhere in a box, along with all the dice and stuff.
I don't mean to interrupt, but this is what my wife is showing me, like off screen, and that is a much younger me in a Speedo. So I decided to share. She found this.
It looks like you have a chicken next to you.
No, it's a. I'm assuming it's a bucket of stuff. I just wanted to just bask in the embarrassment of that. But you're at the comic book shop. I'm sorry. We had a very dynamic where it wasn't just paper and dice, and it wasn't like some, you know, board game out of a box. It was something in between. We had some maps that we would use, you know, like a generic table map that you could use for like wandering through the woods. We had a dungeon map, but he would also just build dungeons out of pencils. We just used pencils on a table, and he would just structure them, and as you discovered rooms, he would add pencils to, you know, give you the dynamics of the room, the dimensions of the room and stuff like that. And he was always very good about describing, like, you're looking at a card table with pencils and little die-cast figurines on it and a handful of dice on every corner, and we would do this for hours and just totally immersed in this card table with nonsense on it. And like, I could still tell you about, you know, saving the kingdom and slaying the dragon and getting my armor, my dragon armor, and when we decided to bring Jedi into our Dungeons and Dragons world with a online Jedi mod that somebody had written the rules. Oh yeah, somebody had written the rules to it. So we used you had the Force, no lightsabers, no lights, laser pistols or anything like that. But why couldn't the Force exist all the way back then with just swords and bows and arrows and whatnot?
You can shoot a
Logically, by the way,
fireball.
logically coherent. That's logically coherent. Like the Force didn't come with lightsabers, which by the way
Right.
were probably plasma. But yeah, it didn't come with lightsabers, right? I mean, you're right. You're right. Yeah, that's.
So we were able to make the logical argument to our dungeon master, and he was like, "I'll let one of you roll a Jedi to see how it goes." He had more fun twisting and turning my attempt at making a good Jedi into an evil little prick, and I just every time he'd just catch me in logic traps, and I would be forced into doing this other thing that I didn't really want to do. But that's where the role playing game. That's a role playing game to me. All the versions of it online are close, but most of the time you're picking out your gear and your stats. You're not really. Cloud is always going to do what Cloud's going to do. Like you're not going to ever, at the end of that game, like the bad guy wins because you as Cloud decided I want the bad guy to win. Whereas in the game, if you decided I want the bad guy to win, you could sabotage the whole group. I mean, there's a reason Dungeons and Dragons always rolled over so often, because every 6 months is a long time to play on like one set of characters. There were some certain characters. Sir Pat had a long lifespan. One of my buddy's characters named Bremen was a mage, had a very long lifespan. But we'd always end up rolling new characters, because that's the fun part, is taking level 1s out into the world and seeing what happens. And I've had at least 3 times that I can think off the top of my head where we rolled level 1s up and we went to my buddy's house on a Saturday night, and this thing was going to go. We were going to go over. This was a 12-hour session. We're there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're not going home till 3 or 4 in the morning. And we home by midnight because everybody's dead. So, and you can now that's the best part about Dungeons and Dragons, because you could all die in one game and say, screw it, we'll play again next week, we'll roll new characters. Or maybe the dungeon master would be like, let's ease back a little bit and let's let a couple of these characters survive.
Yeah, so I have legitimate questions about that, because again, I played the board game-esque version of it where you were allowed to wipe. So if you wipe, you were allowed to just kind of go, all right, we'll start the scenario over again. But again, you played what I would consider real D&D. Like, I didn't play real D&D. I played like the starter up version of D&D, where again, I'm a collector of garbage, right? And those figurines, and I have one up there, and that figurine looks pretty badass. Those figurines are pretty enticing. Like, I wanted to have
How
it.
big is it? Is it like
that would be like a
vary.
3-inch figurine. Like the one I'm showing on screen right now would be a 3-inch figurine. So on the board game version of it, your character would probably be a 1-inch figurine, and then whichever dragon it was, because it was Dungeons and Dragons, every board game that you would buy would eventually end with you fighting a dragon, right? Like that was the whole thing with it. And then that dragon figurine, the price of it, if you didn't get it in the box, would vary a lot, from like $5 to like $50 for like that.
And they didn't come out of the box like that. You'd have to glue them together, and then you'd have to paint them, because they just came like straight pewter, silver.
Right, and again, it's all pretty cool. Like it was all pretty awesome, and that's how I actually remember the first name of the kid I played D&D with. His name was Robert. He was a dungeon master because he bought the board games. By the way, for the record, would be a way better dungeon master than Robert would be. But I grew up apparently $30 poorer than he did, because he was able to actually buy the board game. But when it came to wiping, because again, like I said, when I would wipe, when me and my friends would wipe, with Robert being a dungeon master, we would just pick up the scenario from the beginning, very much like a video game today. If you play video games
it was like
now,
a checkpoint.
Yes, exactly. You wipe, you reload, you try again, and you're kind of more familiar with the patterns. Although D&D is a little different, because again, you're allowed a lot more freedom. And I want to get into what we've been doing, Will, playing Divinity Original Sin 2. Mm-hmm. Divinity 2 Original Sin. Let me get the name of the game correct first. And how
it's just
deep
Divinity
that game
Original
feels.
Sin.
Is it Divinity Original Sin? No, well,
yeah, it's Divinity
Original Sin, but Divinity 2 is a prelude to it. And then Divinity 2 is actually a sequel to a game not called Divinity. It gets kind of weird. It gets
Very.
RPG-ish, I guess. But
Yeah.
so you're saying, Mike, back in the day when you were younger, I'm not going to reveal your age either, but you were old enough to play Dungeons and Dragons pre-digital age. Um, um,
Proto digital. We were all computer nerds at the same time. We were building PCs and shit like that too. So
okay, so handling wipes, which is important to me because again, I played. For people who know, I played WoW, right? Which does not have permadeath. I played all of the. You guys are gonna have to forgive me. I've been drinking this, so I'm gonna forget names of stuff. But the Knights of the Old Republic guys, the Dragon Age guys, help me out, guys who haven't been drinking.
Mass Effect guys.
The Mass Effect guys.
what are you looking for? A
Lord of the
developer
Rings,
name?
There's
Yes,
where-
the
where we
developer
going?
names. I'm gonna pour a drink while you guys fucking help me fill in the blanks.
Well, you got Blizzard. You
all make
have
those games.
BioWare.
BioWare was the answer to that question. Those BioWare games, well, I want to get into KOTOR in a little bit, but I've been meandering about the point. How did you guys handle wipes? More often than not with the exceptions to the rules where your dungeon master may have allowed you guys to,
Well-
these guys survive. Because you guys had permadeath. Like, you guys
Oh, yeah.
had the concept of, we've been playing for the past 6 months, and Irish named the paladin, who was Scottish, got
Sir, what is it?
Sir Patrick
Sir
of Edinburgh.
Patrick. I didn't want to say
There you go.
Patrick because I felt like I would have been racist towards Irish people. But Sir Patrick of Edinburgh, the paladin, got to level 16, faced a demon king or whatever, died, and it's like, no, fuck you, you're dead. Like, that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
And now you want to be a thief? What's good? Like, is that how it went more often than not? Because again, as gamers, we don't suffer permadeath. More often than not, a majority of, again, going back to Will's point of the MMO, in the MMO, you don't suffer permadeath. In a lot of these games that we play, you die, and again, Divinity is great in that way, that if you die and you don't have a potion to res somebody, they're just a body in the dirt, and you have to find them when you find a res potion, which I love about that game. But more often than not, are we talking permadeath? Are we talking forgiveness? Was it completely up to the dungeon master? I ask you, Elder RPG man, tell me about the days of yonder.
Well, I mean, I can only speak to the. I only ever played Dungeons and Dragons with the one group of guys, and they were, we played a little fast and loose with the hardcore. This is what the book says rules. We wouldn't cheat rolling a character. That was very frowned upon. If you rolled you're supposed to roll your stats in order. Some groups would, you could roll 7 stats and then you can pick where you put them.
I need that explained to me.
Yeah, I don't know what stacks
All
are.
right,
Or
like
anything
the very first thing you do in Dungeons and Dragons is character generation, right? So you say I'm gonna play a male bard. So you know that you need like well, you wouldn't even actually announce it like that because you'd want to see their stats before you picked your character. So by the hardcore rules, I think there's seven or 8 stats from like all the normal ones that you would see in a game now: strength, charisma, dexterity, intelligence, agility, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So you would roll. You would take. I believe it was all done with 6-sided dice. So you would roll like 8 6-sided dice, and you would take out the lowest number and the highest number, and that what remained was your stat. I'm probably a little off on the actual rule there, but it's something along those lines.
So it wasn't one of those things. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and be the. I believe I'm a Gen Wire. I don't know where I fall. Again, I played more video game RPG by far. So if we take a standard RPG where we say we've got 30 stat points and we can put them wherever we please. So not all games are like that. Some games are, hey, I'm a thief, and they go, all right, you're thief, here are your base stats, and then you go forth and do. But there's some games a la Elder Scrolls where they go, all right, here's 30 stat points, put them where you will. You're saying you didn't do that. You had to roll how many times?
You would roll one per stat category. So if it were 7 stats, you would roll 7 times. Now I believe by the book, you go in order. So I think the first one is strength. So you roll strength, and whatever that number is, you write in the strength.
Hold on, I don't mean to interrupt, but again, board game D&D'er, not straight up D&D'er. We got our fucking stats fed to us. Do you pick your class before you roll, or do you pick your class after you roll? Okay, you roll first. Okay.
Because if your first stat roll is strength and you get a 9 and you're a warrior, you're dead. You're not gonna make it.
Wait, you said 6-sided dice though.
No, it was regular, 6-sided dice, but you rolled like 8 of them.
Oh, okay, and then you add them up?
And then you take, so if you rolled a 1
and
a 6, you take away the 1 and the 6, and the rest would be your stat.
Okay,
Something along those lines.
All right,
at the very least.
Cool. All right, I understand now.
So I believe the hardcore way is then you go down to the next one, intelligence, and you roll again, and you're like, all right, I got a 12 there, so maybe I'm looking at a mage here, or something magical, or like druid, or something that's going to be more spell casting than strength, because he can barely lift his own legs up to walk, let alone pick up a sword and fight. The way we did it, and I imagine most groups had their own little nuances. It wasn't quite by the book, right? So we would roll, like, if there's 7 categories, we would roll 7 times, and we would have all the numbers written down. And then our DM would allow us, and here's the greatest thing about Dungeons & Dragons.
Let's back up for a second.
Whatever your DM says goes.
Dungeon Master. DM equals Dungeon Master. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. For the uninitiated. Continue.
He had a group of guys who were coming from a different game. We weren't all natural born Dungeons & Dragons players. We came from a different game, and we were brought into this group of Dungeons & Dragons players because our mutual friends.
What game?
It was called Mech Warrior or BattleTech. PC gamers would know it as Mech Warrior. PC game. The board game was BattleTech.
Now I'm intrigued. How did that conversation come about? Was it like, hey, I have this new game. Come over. You should try it. Or was it like, hey, I have this thing.
The whole thing started, the video game started it, to be honest with you, because we would play, this is probably I had my license, so we were talking junior year in high school. I'm even a little late to the party myself. And we would go down to the local county college where one of our buddies was a student, and he worked at the burgeoning computer lab. And what people didn't realize at the time is you could bring 8 people into a computer lab on a Saturday afternoon because nobody was there doing homework.
Just real quick, this is the start of a superhero movie. Hey, we brought this guy into a burgeoning computer studio, and now he's Tech Man with laser arms. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
And the 8 of us would sit down and load up Mech Warrior on 8 different PCs in the computer lab, and for 3 or 4 hours on the school's dime, we would play on a local area network, and we would play Mech Warrior.
LAN. He just spelled out LAN. And by the way, Mech Warrior was so much fucking fun because I played that, and again, like, I'm not gonna reveal our age gap. But and it's not that big, just for the record.
I'm the oldest. I am the oldest.
Yes, but I don't want to say age gap like you're a 60-year-old. I played video games back when there was one button. Like that's not the gap between us. But I did too. Again, I played the Atari back in way back when's. But oh my God, Mech Warrior was so much fun. But this brings us back because I want you to continue to give us kind of like that historical RPG path that you went on. That again, I personally didn't experience, and I know Will didn't experience because Will is the youngest of the 3 faces on the screen. Will's the youngest, Mike's the oldest, and I'm that guy in the middle. Was Mech Warrior an RPG? Because I didn't feel like that was an RPG.
No, not even close.
No, it wasn't right.
Pure simulator.
Okay.
If anything.
Yeah.
It was just drive the robot, shoot the lasers.
Okay. So the digital version of that game was not an RPG. However, its roots were in a graph paper RPG.
A hexagonal map RPG. Actually, a bit more complicated.
I know.
Dragon.
I know. So for the listeners, Danny just did the mind blown signal.
Yeah.
And I agree. I agree.
So the hexagonal map, right, brings me back to Sid Meier's.
Very simple movement types. Yep.
Exactly, where it was a great. I believe that started in his fourth iteration of the game, whose name again I can't remember, thanks to my other friend Evan Williams. And the reason that I'm this fucking Evan Williams is I want to go back to the fact that Will was incredibly late to the standard time. He was an hour and a half late.
We were left, but no.
Where did it go to an hour and a
to
half?
play
I thought it was an hour.
Wait, listen, we're not mad because again we played Overwatch and I killed the shit out of Mike and got play of the game on killing him as Junkrat, who was one of my favorite offensive players in the game. But that is again an aside, and we don't want to get to an aside. So
and we still haven't heard the bridging story. So we're at Mech Warrior. We're almost at him going to D&D.
Very unique, very maybe ununique for the time. A video game led to a conversation where, hey, Mike, did you know that this is an actual board game that you can play? And that's the way it was sold to me, as a board game. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they had a quick discussion. One time we were over at my buddy's house. He's showing me some of the things and the maps because they had started playing it. And I went, I think I want to try this. Whereas if they had asked me to play D&D first, I probably would have been like, no, that's not my thing. I don't, whatever, nerds. Like, I'm hanging out with nerds, and I would have been like, whatever, nerds. Mm-hmm. But they got me with the Mech Warrior and the strategy game and the walking robots and shooting things. I was sold. So they rolled me up a character, and one Saturday afternoon I went over to their house to play a little BattleTech, and loved it. Loved it. It was strategic. It was the board game. It was like playing chess. Okay. But there's dice involved in that game. You have to roll to.
Real quick, who is a chess player? I am a chess player.
I know how to play chess, but I would not call myself a chess player.
Okay, well, let's back up. I was a chess player. I haven't played in near a decade, but all right, go ahead, continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see who would understand that reference.
But it was all that in combination. So it was playing my favorite video game and chess, and a big immersive, never-ending board game, and I was just hooked because you create a character. And your character, gets a certain amount of credits. You buy a mech, you perform a mission. At the end of the mission, you get rewards. Usually in BattleTech, it was in the form of cash and currency and salvage from the battlefield, which you could then sell for more currency, which then means you can buy the bigger and badder mech and the better, bigger weapons and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah. So we played this probably a good 6 or 7 months. Just like me and like 3 of my buddies, either at their house or my house. It was always like it was an all-night event. It was always, great. Loved it. While in the midst of one of those games, they said, you know what you might like? And I said, what's that? And they said,
Dick. Did they say Dick?
No, they didn't say. They didn't say Dick. They probably could have. Probably should have. But they said, when we're not playing this, we play Dungeons and Dragons. So the same 3 guys who I was playing BattleTech with also played Dungeons and Dragons with another group of like 3 guys. And I went, and they're like, it's a lot like this. It's just instead of Star Wars, it's the Lord of the Rings, which neither movie had been out at the time, but. No, I'm not. Star Wars.
You're not that fucking old, bro. You're not that old.
But it was Lord of the Rings wasn't out yet. But that was the point, right? It was.
No, I got you.
It's Lord of the Rings versus instead of Star Wars. We're playing Star Wars. You could be playing Lord of the Rings. And I said, I guess I'm not opposed to that. I'll get, if you guys want to play and you're looking for an extra body, let me know. I guess I'll give it a go. So fast forward a couple weeks, and there we are sitting in somebody else's basement and they're teaching me how to roll a character and blah 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 blah. And
Just
Did
real
it
quick.
have to?
I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Did it have to be a basement? You guys
That
couldn't
was
do it
my
like in the living
question.
room?
That was 100%. I was gonna ask the same question. Were you guys literally in a basement, or is that just like
well,
tech talk?
if-
Like, is that just something we
if-
say as a badge of honor that we were in someone's basement?
it's almost badge of honor. It's at least one house was in a kid's bedroom. My other buddy's bedroom was in like his whole basement was his room.
Right. So,
Played on my dining room table.
all right. So sometimes you were literally
In
underground, but sometimes you were
Yeah.
just in someone's room with black light. Did you
Yeah,
guys do
sometimes-
black lights and
See,
Cheetos?
now-
Is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
We never had any of the weird stuff. Nobody ever came dressed up. Nobody ever brought like a wooden sword and a magician's hat with them.
Just
Nobody ever committed suicide when their favorite character died. Like we didn't have any of that stereotypical stuff from the mid '80s where D&D was the devil's game, and the church was dead set against it and everything else. We didn't have any of that. I did hear about that from my mom though, being the good Catholic mother she was. She was like, "Wait, when you were playing with the robots, it was fine, but this D&D thing," I was like, "Mom, that was like 15 years ago, and it was like 4 assholes who."
So, just real quick, I am this close to like being a cosplayer. Like, you guys don't even understand. Like, I've hit the point in my life where I'm like, yeah, I'll dress up. Why not? Number two, I had no idea that committing suicide because of your character dying in D&D was part of the stereotypical idea of what a D&D player was. So I learned something a second ago. But I do want to get into something else in your evolution because, again, if this is your first episode of Space Chicken, this is, again, a technology-based podcast that has been incredibly video game focused for at least the genesis of our series because all of us, including our good friend Scott, who is trapped in a well, and man, I really hope the firefighters can get him out of it.
No Wi-Fi in that will. No
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Is like, dude, no Facebook updates. What's going on? I don't know. I don't have Facebook anyway.
He doesn't have a lassie or anything.
It's tragic, and I mean, it's like he can't even watch YouTube videos to help pass the time. So, I forgot my point, but no, it was no. So
we're a tech-based webcast that is or podcast that's been mostly about games. So
and we've been definitely mostly about games. And we've settled into this tabletop thing, and historically, I think is important because I played Knights of the Old Republic, and Burke is gone. And we've all played Knights of the Old Republic, and again, that is a is that a lightsaber?
Is that a penis?
I thought
we're gonna go with lightsaber.
I thought it was
what do you
at first.
what do you want to dress up as tomorrow?
So it's tomorrow.
Wait, I gotta find one with batteries in it.
So honestly, like
There
I
it
have
is.
to do so many sit-ups before. Oh my God, that's totally Luke's. I have to do so many sit-ups before I'm ready to cosplay.
Dawn.
No, so this is a thing that we do for the game industry first. And again, we have a lot of technology-based podcasts down in the pipeline that we're not going to do. And the reason we're not going to do it is because Mike is always on time, and Mike is a video gamer. I'm a technology guy. Will's a technology guy. Scott's a technology guy. Scott's trapped in a well, whatever. Hopefully he doesn't die. But this whole history of role playing is important because again, I played KOTOR, which is Knights of the Old Republic, and that game tricked you into thinking you were playing an action RPG, and you weren't. You were playing D&D that looked live, and that is something that Mass Effect does as well. Mass Effect is a more action oriented RPG where you're shooting people. But all you're doing is underneath that entire subsystem is playing D&D, right? what people don't understand is that when you shoot at someone in a first-person shooter, your machine gun does X amount of damage, right? And that damage is whatever it is. In an RPG, it's your damage versus their protections against a underlying system dice roll.
Even first person shooters.
Really? Is
Yep.
that a thing? Because I thought if it's like
Damage,
Yeah, I thought it was just like, boom.
distance, damage, distance, armor, level, all that kind of stuff. Even in first person shooter, you're basically the computer is rolling dice for you. And if you're more accurate, you're more accurate. But it's not all RNG bullets or anything like that. But it's
yeah,
still,
but I think the line is definitely where you're saying where you're more accurate. So like if we go back and we play, not to bring back, we play Overwatch, right? If I get a headshot, it's a headshot. But when you're playing Knights of the Old Republic or Divinity,
it's a dice roll for
Original
critical.
Sin, or yeah, exactly. So you beat me to the punch. But yeah, it's a dice roll. Whether it's a crit hit, whether you hit, whether the armor prevents the damage. So you used to play something you described to me as a mutter, and this is something that my entire life has skipped out on. Now, I compared it to something I did when I was in college, and I played a Gundam RPG where the correct term is not Dungeon Master, but the dude in charge, right? That guy, I would be X Gundam, and I would fight Y Gundam, and he would determine a winner off of stats. But that's not what happened under your mutter. So if you could describe what a mutter is, and just so you know, there's a Gundam on screen. I googled mutter, and I got a bunch of old ass people under Google image for mutter. So I don't even want to know. But if you could explain what a mutter is, and if you could describe your mutter experience, please.
Well, a mutter was simply somebody who played a MUD, an MUD, a multi-user dimension. It's MMO RPG before that term was created, and it's World of Warcraft if there were no pictures. So before World of Warcraft, because I remember when World of Warcraft came out, because it killed the MUD, because everybody went to the one with the pictures. So the multi-user dimension was Dungeons and Dragons. The one we played was loosely based on like the Tolkien world, because there was hobbits and everything else, and you could walk through the Shire on your way out to slay the dragon. Everything was text-based, so you would log in. I can't even say it wasn't even web-based, because it wasn't on a website. You literally had to just log into this. I can't even remember the technology that we used at the time. But
what was it? A website or like a chat room or?
It definitely wasn't a website, because you definitely didn't use Internet Explorer. There was we all had downloaded
like a three-way
one.
call.
No, because there could be 50 to 100 people online at the same time on this thing.
Conference call.
No, it wasn't a call.
Whatever. Conference call, Dick.
Whatever it was.
For the time,
It would be considered web-based now. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Nowadays, it would be like logging on to play your favorite web-based game. You could go on and log in. So you would go to this address, and the screen would scroll down with a bunch of text, and you would enter your login and stuff, and you could have multiple characters, and everything in it was text-based. So when you got to the login screen at the bottom, there was only one where to go. You always spawned in the tower. There's only one thing you could do. You could go down from that first room. So at the very bottom of all the text that gave you this, vivid description of the room that you were standing in, if you cared to read it, at the bottom there would be a little list, and it would say anybody who else was standing in the room with you, and then a direction of movement available. So you would hit D for down, hit enter, and your character would move to the next room, which would then scroll up. So then you'd get the description of the next room. So after you played for enough...
Wait. So to make it clear for the listeners / watchers, you would input a text thing?
Yep, all text-based.
Yeah.
Everything was text. Commands, movement, descriptions,
okay, and
emotes.
that text corresponds to a graph, a board, or what is it? So when you say that you hit down and that your character will move down, where would it move down? Would it move down in a digital sense, and that there's some type of I don't want to say web page because again this is what were we talking 90s? Or
Well,
talking
this-
90s?
Talking,
I actually,
97,
Well, it's
90.
90s.
Wow.
I was just fucking with you, but
The-
yeah.
the-
So we're talking 90s. So I don't remember the 90s outside of music, outside of grunge. So you say you hit down. Is it a shared space where someone can digitally see where your character has moved, or is it I have to keep track on my own where your character is? A la like digital chess.
The environment would keep track of where all the characters were and the NPCs were. If I were in the room and you left the room, it would say Danny leaves west.
So digital. It's
somewhere
digital.
in this, it's all digital. There's
Okay.
nothing. There's nothing to see. There's literally nothing to see.
So if
actually,
if
I
I log
leave
into
west.
this, not a web page, because it says not a web page, right? But if I
No.
logged into it, I would immediately see where Will is in the top right, Mike is in the top left, I'm in the bottom left.
No,
Dice are in the top right.
This world was gigantic.
Yeah. So I actually
You're talking about people
remember-
would type in command paths to take them to a particular room, and you're talking about entering anywhere up to like 600 plus characters, so that you would save it under a command, so you could just hit like on your character screen, you could say go to clan home and hit enter, and that phrase would trigger this saved path that you would put in there. And as long as you were in, but it only worked from one room, right? Because go to if it starts with north, and you're not standing in the right room, you're going to run into a wall and then all of a sudden run off east and follow the directions. So it would literally, if you were standing in one room, you could say go to clan home, and this string of commands would spam your screen. Just woof, your screen would go spam, and then all of it would just keep and all of a sudden all the descriptions would spam by until
so
and you would end
hold
up
on.
in your room.
I actually know what he's talking about. It's like one of those legends from, far time long ago. It was actually in DOS is what it was in.
Yes.
And
yes,
it was just text. It was straight up text.
straight text, not a goddamn
So
image.
let's say it give you a paragraph, and like Mike was saying, it gives you vivid, text on where you are. There's a lamp in the corner, blah 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 blah, and then it gives you a few commands, or there might be some commands that you just remember from playing so much that
And there's a command to bring up a command list.
yeah. So let me go
I-
down these stairs and so on.
So I understand all of that, but my question comes: who is monitoring all this? Is it so we go back to D&D? There's a dungeon master, right? So
Yep.
we go to the digital RPG, which is, I believe, where we're at right now, right? It's a digital RPG. Who is tracking all of the player movement? You brought the number 600, and we're talking about the 90s. That's a big number for the 90s. Again, in the 20-aughts, millions is not a big number. However, in the 90s, when we talk about hundreds of players individually making movements, individually making decisions, individually affecting 100 other players, who is keeping track of this? Is there a dungeon master? Is there a human dungeon master? That's where my question comes in.
In theory, there's both. Whoever coded this thing, and it was not one person, it was a team of people, and there was
Steve and his friends.
thousand
But yeah.
of these different type of mods. This is the one that we ended up knowing a bunch of people on and playing on. They coded it. The game itself, if you knew where you were and you knew where you wanted to go, you could type in the commands as fast as you want, and you wouldn't like teleport there. You would literally hop through each room, making left, rights, ups and downs as you went. I am not a coder by any means of the word, I throw away Rubik's cubes when I see them on principle. But these people were able to put that into this game space, and then they would moderate it themselves too to look out, because it was very easy to hack these things and cheat these things. Because if you had any idea how to code, you're playing in a DOS game. You're like literally you can just type in new commands, and if you're given like the right access via the mods, which were called gods, you could literally break the game. And we did it routinely with the gods' favor because they thought it was hysterical to watch us torment all the people who played. We were the bad guy clan. We were the evil ones. We were the ones that everybody was out for, and we were the ones who were figuring out ways in this mod to set you up to just obliterate you. So like if we had one of our guys go out and kill you, we knew you were going to go. There was one of the rooms where you could go pick up your body at the morgue, and you could res it if you had a spell. So we would wait, and right outside the morgue there was a PvP room, like because there was PvE rooms where there was like you couldn't use physical violence to another player, but like right outside the morgue there was a PvP room, and like clearly the gods or the mods did this on purpose. Why else would that be a PvP room? So as Naked Joe, who just got killed out in the wild by one of our clan guys, spawns back in the tower and starts spamming in control directions to get back down to the morgue so he can collect his gear and not lose a level, one of our guys would be hiding in the PvP room, hidden as a thief. So when he spams into the room, he can't auto trigger on you or anything like that. And we would literally just sit there and type in the backstab command and mush the return key and just wait for him to walk into the room. Because the second he walks into the room, my command's going to recognize him. Boom, backstab him. He's dead. That's 2 bodies. You can only resurrect one. He's going to lose a level. And we would just, like, if you were an asshole to our group,
evil.
guess what? You better log off because you're not going to come back. You're not going to be level 50 tomorrow.
So as a former WoW player on a PvP server, and for those of you who are listening and not watching, the bird just went up. That's some classic shit right there.
That's where WoW came from.
Yeah, it really does. Like it sounds like every time I've gotten ganked on a PvP server when I was underleveled in a place I shouldn't have been, but it's still kind of a place where hey, it's in between level 20/15 and I go on 15. And some level 25 person shows up and is like, hey, here's your dick. Does it taste good? Because I just kicked it up your throat. It's interesting to know that this stuff it precedes any type of I don't want to say digitation because you play digitally, but it's not new. You know what I'm saying?
No, the ideas come from
way back.
As soon as somebody could figure out how to make this into a game, like the idea of pitting people against each other and letting the dice figure it out. That didn't even start with D&D. I mean, you can go back like that's where Stratego, like all that stuff is the same. It's anytime you're saying like I think I'm gonna put a person here because it's gonna stop you from doing something, and the other person goes, ha ha ha, sucker. It's the same as chess. It all goes back to chess. Like, isn't chess the first game where you could outthink somebody because there were so many different positions and players on the board? So it's that's where all that stuff starts. Video games didn't reinvent this. They made it prettier. They certainly improved parts of it. I miss the old D&D days. I just recently spoke with my buddy on Facebook, and I was like, do you guys play anymore? Because I'm not saying I'm looking for a regular game, but I certainly wouldn't mind getting together once a month and throwing die around. Because there's an aspect to it that's just the video games don't feed, and I like a good RPG on console or even PC, but I don't play a ton of them. I kind of wait and I think I'm gonna dip my toe into this one, so I'll probably play the next Final Fantasy, even though I don't think that's not an RPG whatsoever, if you ask me. But
not anymore for sure.
And it's part of like Destiny's not nearly an RPG either, but that's what keeps me going back is I can do this and I have a clan and we can go out and do this, you know. It's become something different in the digital world. And I was never a WoW player. WoW killed my mud, and I was like, I don't want this. I want what I had in the mud. And even when half of the clan left the mud and started playing WoW, it didn't interest me. It was still pretty shitty looking. That first year and a half of WoW, it wasn't the most attractive looking game. And like I still didn't have a console at the time. I just focused on playing other stuff. But
Well, I gotta tell you, the RPG conversation can continue. Like, I feel like we can do an RPG part 2. Especially when it comes to where we are now and the RPG. Like, I feel like we sparked an incredibly interesting concept of what we think an RPG is when Will was talking about what he thought an RPG was and was 100% incorrect. And this history of RPG.
That is what an RPG is to him.
Yeah.
Right,
I think that's what an RPG is today, right?
No, you're
Well, the
wrong because
foundation.
you have to have character development and you have to have decision points. Two things which you did not address. But I feel like this kind of history that Mike gave us was incredibly interesting. And I feel like maybe not next week, but in a few weeks we can revisit the topic. Whenever Scott gets out of the well, I'm hoping someone gave him a grappling hook. Maybe one.
I sent him schematics on how to build the ladder, but apparently, phone's not working down there. So
he didn't get it. Again, poor reception, underground-ish. Like, it's the well's underground, but it has a tunnel up to reception. But whatever.
It's very hit and miss.
He should have changed carriers. He didn't want to listen.
I feel like this is going to be a Lifetime movie any day now.
Any day. But I feel like we should have what is the RPG part 2. But I think for the point of the fact that I feel like people listen to us in a 1-hour time block, we should probably bookend this. Also, I've had a lot of whatever. I reached the side, I grabbed the cup,
that
and
stuff.
didn't work.
It's probably on the floor.
Again, if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. If you're listening on your preferred podcast directory, please give us a thumbs up or whatever the equivalent is. Again, I am No Right Answers, NRAG_Danny on the Instagrams, Badmouth_Danny on the YouTubes, not the YouTubes, the Twitter. Mike, you want to do a plug?
Just Twitter, Burke_. No, what am I? Mike Burke 668.
I have no idea what the fuck you are. I have you saved in my settings.
I don't remember. If you guys show up tomorrow, I'll see if I can't dig out some dice, and we'll have a hell of a day.
All right. Will, you got anything?
Yeah, I want to learn some D&D, and my stuff is going to be in the description.
Dick and deeper dick. Hey, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Please keep it up. We're going to, again, we do this weekly, the podcast. We do the game montages as I remember to record. Thank you guys for watching / listening. Space Chicken Radio out.
Sir Pat for life.
All right, guys, I'm fucked up. I'm going to sleep. You guys.
Sounds good.